The execution chamber was silent. A dim, sterile glow illuminated the metallic walls, reflecting off the cybernetic figures seated in a circle. The boy stood at the center, hands bound, his school uniform torn and dirt-stained, his eyes unafraid. A single noose hung above him, a symbol of power, a message meant for the entire galaxy. The tribunal had spoken. The punishment was set. The lead official, a towering figure of polished metal and pulsating blue veins, stood. His mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. For crimes against the Galactic Empire, for insubordination and inciting rebellion, this human is sentenced to death. Let this serve as a reminder to all. The silence deepened. No cries, no protests. The boy's breathing was steady. He lifted his chin, meeting the unfeeling lenses of his executioners. The lever was pulled. A sharp snap. The body hung lifeless. The sentence was carried out. A transmission was sent across the Empire. Planets watched. Some cheered. Others looked away. Few understood the weight of what had just occurred. The Empire had won, or so they believed. The Galactic Empire saw Earth as an insignificant backwater world. Humans, an unruly and defiant species, were tolerated but never respected. When resistance surfaced, it was crushed, swiftly and without hesitation. The execution was a statement, an example to all who would challenge authority. Among the ruling elites, there was no debate. This was justice. The boy was a nuisance. Another nameless dissenter lost in the Empire's vast dominion. Their mistake was assuming no one would care. The boy had a name, and his father had power. The message reached Earth. It spread through encrypted channels past security barriers into the highest levels of military command. But only one man mattered. General Alexander Kane stood in silence, eyes locked on the frozen image of his son's execution. His expression did not change. His posture remained rigid, unmoving. Advisors entered, hesitant. No one spoke. The air in the room was suffocating, the weight of something immeasurable pressing down. A single breath, a slow exhale. Kane turned away from the screen. His voice was quiet, steady. Prepare the fleet. There were no arguments, no questions. Orders were relayed within seconds. Warships powered up. Engines roared to life. Humanity did not weep. It did not plead. It retaliated. Across the Galactic Empire, life continued as usual. Planets bustled, trade routes thrived, and the ruling class basked in the illusion of invulnerability. The death of one human child was insignificant until the first station fell. It was not a skirmish. It was annihilation. A fleet of ships materialized out of the void, Earth's military striking with precision and fury. Stealth technology rendered enemy defenses useless. The Empire's forces scrambled, their fleets crushed before alarms could fully sound. The attack lasted 13 minutes. Then silence. No survivors. No distress calls. The Empire took notice. By the time they mobilized, another world had burned. Then another. Humans did not fight like the others. They did not engage in prolonged warfare, did not negotiate, did not allow for counterattacks. They struck, they destroyed, and they disappeared. Pattern emerged. Military installations gone. Supply chains severed. Strategic outposts leveled. The humans were methodical, ruthless. The Empire had conquered countless civilizations, but this was different. This was personal. The High Council convened in a chamber far from the front lines, their voices raised in disbelief. A rebellion of this scale was impossible. Earth was a minor system, unremarkable. This defiance was unacceptable. Our intelligence reports claim they should not have this capability, one official hissed. This must be the work of external factions. The humans lack the resources to wage war on this scale. Silence. Then, a new voice, uncertain. Perhaps we were wrong. The words hung in the air, unwelcome and unacknowledged. Arrogance had blinded them. What they had dismissed as an inferior species had just crippled their war machine in a matter of days. Then the message arrived. It was not a plea, not a declaration, just two words. I'm coming. The emperor himself received the transmission. He stared at the simple text, processing the implications. For centuries, the empire had ruled unchallenged. This was the first time a species had dared to strike back with such unrelenting force. A new order was given. All fleets to the outer colonies. Crush this uprising before it spreads. His advisors hesitated. Their tactics. They are nothing, the emperor snapped. We will drown them in fire. A pause. The room was heavy with doubt. A single voice broke the silence. They are already here. Across the vast expanse of the empire, fire rained from the sky. The fleet that had been ordered to advance found itself ambushed. Traps had been set, warships disabled before they could respond. Human forces struck with surgical precision, exploiting every weakness. Worlds fell in hours. The empire's greatest commanders perished before understanding what they were facing. The idea of human inferiority crumbled. Then the impossible happened. One of the empire's core planets, untouched for centuries, burned. Panic spread. The invincible were bleeding. The emperor watched the reports, hands tightening into fists. Billions of credits in military assets gone. Elite soldiers massacred. Entire fleets obliterated. One by one, his strongest allies fell silent. Then, another message. Not text. A video. The emperor hesitated before playing it. It was footage of his own capital taken from above. Fires raged. His palace, the symbol of his empire, lay in ruins. And standing amidst the destruction, unmoving, was a single figure. General Alexander Kane. The emperor's blood ran cold. The camera zoomed in. Kane's face was devoid of expression. His lips parted, forming two final words. No mercy. The fleet moved without hesitation, cutting through the void like a blade through flesh. Silent, precise, unstoppable. There were no declarations of war, no demands, no warnings. Humanity had spoken with action, and the response was already in motion. Earth's military did not believe in prolonged conflict. They had learned from history wars were won by speed, strategy, and the element of overwhelming force. The Galactic Empire, for all its might, had never faced an enemy that struck without hesitation, without mercy. Their mistake had been treating humans like every other conquered species. But humans did not submit. They retaliated. The first wave of attacks had shattered the Empire's outer defenses. The second wave was different. It was not about destruction. It was about control. One by one, key systems were seized. Communication hubs, fuel refineries, hyperspace gates, all captured in coordinated strikes. The Empire's fleets scrambled to respond, but every move was anticipated, countered, and crushed. They were fighting ghosts, an enemy that was always a step ahead. Admiral Varric, one of the Empire's highest-ranking officers, watched in horror as his fleet crumbled. He had fought in countless wars, had crushed entire civilizations under his command. Yet now he was powerless. Every strategy he had ever learned was useless. The humans didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like predators. Reports flooded in. Enemy ships appearing where they shouldn't be. Entire battalions vanishing without a trace. Panic set in among his officers. The enemy was unpredictable, adaptable. They struck and disappeared before countermeasures could be deployed. A distress signal was sent to the Empire's high command. No response. Another system lost. Another fleet wiped out. The realization sank in. The Empire was losing, and it was losing fast. Earth's forces did not waste time celebrating victories. This was not about vengeance anymore. This was about sending a message, one the galaxy would never forget. General Kane stood in the war room, eyes scanning a holographic projection of the Empire's territory. His voice was cold, calculated. We take their power. We take their control. And when they are at their weakest, we strike the heart. The command was relayed. The Empire's supply chains were severed. Entire planets starved within days. Their people turned against them, riots erupting in the streets. The illusion of order crumbled. This was war at its most brutal level. not just fought with weapons but with precision, with psychological warfare. A galactic empire that had once ruled unchallenged was now on its knees. But it was not over. Not yet. The Emperor's personal fleet, the largest and most powerful in the known galaxy, was assembled. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, the full strength of the Empire. The order was given: eliminate the human threat at all costs. This was their last chance. And it was exactly what Kane had planned for. As the Empire's armada moved into position, Earth's forces disappeared. No battles, no engagements, just silence. Admiral Varric stood on the bridge of his flagship, scanning the empty void before him. "They've retreated," an officer said, disbelief in his voice. "They know they can't win." Varric wanted to believe it, but deep down he knew this was not surrender. This was the calm before the storm. Then, without warning, the sky burned. Ships materialized out of the void, far beyond the Empire's sensor range. Human warships, sleek and deadly, descended upon the Empire's forces with terrifying efficiency. Before Varric could react, the first wave struck. Stealth bombers slipped past defenses, targeting command centers and flagship bridges. Capital ships fired kinetic rounds that punched through hulls like paper. EMP pulses disabled entire squadrons, leaving them adrift, helpless. The battlefield became chaos. Empire warships, once thought indestructible, exploded like fireworks. Communication lines failed. Fleet formations collapsed. This was not a battle. This was an execution. Varric's ship shook violently. Reports screamed through the comms. One after another, the Empire's greatest warships were falling. He turned to his officers, his voice breaking. This isn't war." "No," a lieutenant whispered. "This is vengeance." General Kane stood on the deck of his command ship, watching as the Empire's armada disintegrated. This was what they had failed to understand. Humans did not fight for conquest. They did not fight for power. They fought for their own. And when someone took from them, they took everything in return. The fleet pushed forward, past the wreckage of the Empire's last hope. The path was clear now. The capital was next. The Emperor was waiting. The capital stood as the last unbroken symbol of the Empire's rule. A planet of towering spires, sprawling cities, and impenetrable fortresses. It had never been touched by war. The idea of an enemy reaching this deep into the Empire's heart had always been unthinkable. Until now, the sky darkened as Earth's fleet arrived. Not in scattered waves or probing strikes, but as a single, overwhelming force. The defenses activated immediately: planetary shields, automated cannons, entire fleets rising from hidden stations. The Empire's final stand had begun. They fought with desperation. Every weapon fired. Every ship launched. Every last soldier thrown into the battle. But it didn't matter. The humans had come prepared. Orbital bombardments targeted key installations, silencing defenses before they could fully activate. Elite ground teams landed with brutal efficiency, carving through resistance as if they were ghosts. Every step of the battle had been planned, every countermeasure anticipated. The streets were chaos. Civilians ran, some screaming, others too shocked to process what was happening. The Imperial Guard, the best-trained soldiers in the galaxy, were cut down before they could organize a real defense. The Empire had ruled for centuries, believing itself untouchable. Now, in the span of hours, it was falling. The Emperor sat in his throne room, watching the feeds in silence. His palace, the symbol of his reign, was the last stronghold left. The outer defenses had already collapsed. His generals were either dead or had gone silent. His advisors looked to him for guidance, for orders. There was nothing left to say. A tremor shook the palace. Explosions outside, getting closer. The sound of war, of finality. Then the doors burst open. The guards raised their weapons, but it was over before they could react. They fell one by one, precision shots dropping them instantly. The Emperor didn't flinch. He knew who had come for him. General Kane stepped forward. His armor was scratched, his uniform scorched, but his expression was unchanged. Cold, unforgiving. The Emperor looked at him, eyes dark with understanding. "You've won." Cain didn't answer. He just stared, as if memorizing this moment. The moment an empire died, the emperor exhaled, closing his eyes. He had ruled 1,000 worlds, conquered species, destroyed civilizations, and in the end, all it took was one act of cruelty to bring it all down. A single child. He opened his eyes one last time. Cain raised his weapon. A shot echoed through the chamber. The war was over. The emperor was dead. The heart of the empire had stopped beating. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Some celebrated, others mourned, but most watched in stunned silence. The invincible had fallen. The old order had crumbled. But the war was not truly over. An empire of this scale did not vanish in a single day. There were remnants. Admirals who refused to surrender, warlords who saw opportunity, planets unsure of what came next. The void left behind was dangerous. Chaos threatened to take hold. Cain understood this. He had not come just to destroy. He had come to ensure nothing like this ever happened again. His fleet did not leave. It remained in orbit, its presence a message to all. Order would be restored, but on Earth's terms. The executions began swiftly. High-ranking officials, commanders, anyone responsible for the atrocities the Empire had committed. Justice was delivered without trial, without hesitation. There was no resistance. The fear that had once kept the galaxy in line had turned against those who wielded it. The sight of Imperial officers being dragged through the streets by their own people became common. The oppressed had found their voice. But Cain did not stay to watch. His mission was complete. The Empire had paid in full. As his ship ascended, he looked down at the world below, now a shattered relic of its former self. There was no satisfaction, no victory in his expression. Only silence. He had won. Humanity had won. But the cost was immeasurable. The fleet turned, engines burning bright against the void. They had done what they came to do. Now it was time to go home.